On the table, we have the CZ P-01 current production 9mm, and then we have the discontinued CZ P-06 in 40 Smith & Wesson or 10mm short. So we have 9mm, 10mm short. This is the difference in what the cartridges will look like. So we have 9mm on the left, 10mm short or 40 Smith & Wesson as it's called, 115, 165 grain. So you see this one is quite a bit fatter than this one. So you do get less capacity in the magazines, but you are going to get more power with this cartridge. And I would say about another 100 joules of energy, but you get 4 less cartridges. So in the magazine here, this is the P-06 magazine that it came with, only one magazine. And then this is the P-01 magazine. It has the witness holes in the back. So when you put the 40 Smith & Wesson into it, you only can get 11 in here, and it will go all the way down to 15. So when you put 11 40 Smith & Wesson, it'll show completely full. But that's just a minor trade-off, and there is a little bit trade-off in the cost. These aren't identical. The P-06 is a little bit heavier. If you look at them side by side, you'll clearly see that the P-06 on the right is a little bit wider. I'm going to strip them and show you that you can take the barrels and put them interchangeable. This is kind of like the Glock 17 and the Glock 22, where it's the same size firearm. The only difference is the barrel. So the only problem with these P-06s is as a discontinued item, there's going to be no product support for them. So that means no replacement barrels. And I've already looked. I looked on Cajun Gunworks and I looked at CZ Customs. No 40 Smith & Wesson barrels. So if you're able to find one of these, you got to make sure that the barrel's in good shape. And this one thankfully was. So, or else, once you wear the barrel out, your only option is to get a 9mm replacement barrel. So in the end, it's not a useless gun, but it will be a useless 40 Smith & Wesson gun if you wear the barrel out and there's nobody to replace it, unless, you can get one custom made or whatnot. So obviously you can take the 9mm barrel and make it bigger into a 10mm barrel. So that could be an option, but this is a cool one-off that I was able to get that somebody wanted to trade me a SIG P365 for, or else I don't think I would have bought this. I saw this at the gun show, and I don't know anything about it because it's discontinued, and it was discontinued in 2016, so that's quite a long time ago at this point in time in the gun market. Things have moved rapidly forward, and the manufacturing of this, between this is 17 years difference in production, if you can believe it. And if you have both of them in your hand, I'm going to think that you think the P-06 feels better in the hand. Now there is some minor differences in the parts. So if you look at the slide lever stop, you see that the machining is a little bit different, and the machining is going to be a little bit different on the slide. So there is a little bit of a difference. Like there's this little bubble here, and there's a little dot in the slide lever stop. Those are minor differences. And then the trigger is way more curved on the P-06 than the P-01. So you see how much more curved it is? I think that's kind of a deal breaker for people that are CZ fans, because this is so aggressive compared to this. This is what all the other CZs are going to be. So like my 75D, my 75 Compact, they're going to be like this. This is the only one that has this aggressive of a swoop in the trigger. So you're either going to like it or you're going to hate it, I think, because it's different than all the other ones. I think it's okay, but to dry fire with, I think it's better because the more aggressive curve, it's easier to get leverage and a greater pull. So when it's a little bit less like this, my hand, I don't have the biggest hands. So with this one, I think that I get greater control with my index finger, as dumb as it sounds, because of how curved this is here, as opposed to how straight it is here. Now, Cajun Gunworks sells a more straight trigger, so that's an option that you could do too also, that if you didn't like this and you didn't want to go to this, they have a more straight one. So because of the product compatibility, there is cool stuff that you can do to the P-06, but in the end, I want to leave it like it is, because I do think that this one, even though it's the same finish, it's smoother feeling. It's like in the hand, and in the controls, everything feels a little smoother. So the only downside is 40 Smith & Wesson is a more powerful cartridge, and that I wasn't able to use all the same Cajun Gunworks parts. The reduced power recoil spring it wasn't enough. So I had to change back to the factory recoil spring in order for the pistol to cycle function properly. But I've put about 400 rounds or more in this P-06 since I got it about 6 weeks ago. And I've shot it back to back with the P-01. And I can say that I like it as much, if not more, but I don't think that it's an upgrade. Why? Well, it's a more powerful cartridge, and the pistol weighs, I would say, like 1.5 ounces more. This one, somebody put a full-length all-metal guide rod in here, and this one just has the plastic one. So when you weigh these on the scale, it's like a 2-ounce difference, but that part alone is like 1/2 ounce. So this one does have a little bit more weight to it to help absorb the 100 joules more of energy from the 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. But at the same time, I don't really think that I really need that, but there's a little trade-off in the accuracy, right? So a little bit more powerful cartridge in the same size pistol, my accuracy isn't the same. With the 9mm in this, I can do a little bit better, but with the 75 compact, I can do even better. So as far as these two, I think it's a wash. I like them equally. I'm carrying the P-06 now, but I can switch back to the P-01, no problem. I don't think that I necessarily need the extra capability here. I'm okay with the smaller capacity. It's 4 less cartridges, but then again, there's a lot more joules of energy per cartridge. So you look at the size difference between the two. You know, a lot of people would say bigger is better, and when it comes to this stuff, it's hard to disagree with that in certain circumstances, especially for self-defense. So you do get less capacity, and for some people, that's their whole thing, is it's got to be able to have 10 million rounds in it. So if you're one of the capacity people, then probably you would want to go with the P-01, because you can even get the extended base plate magazine thing +2. Then you can turn it into 17 + 1, or 13 + 1 here. You can do the same thing, which I've considered, but I don't really want to do that. I like the way that the magazine looks in there flush, but one thing I can say about the P-06 is that's the sound of the magazine that it came with, but the new ones, way smoother. So these new magazines, even the 75 compact magazines, they're just smoother for some reason. I don't have any desire to get any of these old school style magazines. The 75 compact ones will work just fine, or these ones that have the witness holes in the back that come from the factory that are impossible to find online. Same thing, they'll work. So either way, you can use the same magazines, which is great. So a lot of the parts compatibility, the magazine compatibility, you can use it as a backup and you can switch the barrels around. But in the end, this one doesn't have the product support for the barrel. Everything else, parts-wise, except for I think the plunger too, could be interchanged. And you'll see when I take it apart. So there's only a couple issues I would think about the complete compatibility. One, obviously the barrel, and number 2 would be the plunger, which I'll show you here in a second. Now you can see I have both of them field stripped, and you can clearly see the P-06 on the right, P-01 on the left. You can clearly see one is bigger than the other, one is wider than the other. There's a little difference in the plunger design. The one on my left in the P-01 is a circle. Here it's a semicircle. So there isn't 100% parts compatibility, I would say. Maybe if you had a different year production, but this is a 2007 production versus 2024 production. So 17 years difference in production. You can clearly see one barrel is bigger than the other. It's pretty obvious. 10 mil short, 9 mil. So obviously you can't put 10 mil and 9 mil. So it's only one word compatibility this way. But you see, it does fit in there perfectly. Now, I haven't tried to fire 9mm ammo through this, well, because why? I have the P-01 for that. And I bought this specifically because my first pistol ever was a Glock 22 in 40 Smith & Wesson. So I do like the 40 caliber cartridge. I just don't know if the trade-off for capacity and power for the cost is worth it for most people. And I knew at one point it wasn't for me, but now it's only like a few cents difference in the cartridge cost. So realistically, I can shoot them for about close to the same price. It used to be not that way. It used to be such a bigger gap that the cost influenced you to like 9mm more than 10mm short. But now I even got a discount on buying bulk ammo in 40 Smith & Wesson because I think people don't shoot it as much. So that's a thing to consider too, is that you can find 40 Smith & Wesson ammo in bulk for about the same price as 9mm. I got 1,000 rounds of it for $2.50, so that's 25 cents a round. So there can be some good deals to be had, and you do get a more powerful cartridge, but there is a few trade-offs. Here's my final thoughts between the two. The CZ P-01 is a lot more practical, and the CZ P-06 a little less practical. It's like the sports car that you can only drive when the weather's nice out. This you can drive year-round. Why do I say that? Well, this is a discontinued item, so once you wear the barrel out, what are you going to do? I know that they're designed to be parts interchangeable, but that's not exactly the case as you saw with the plunger. So a large percentage of the parts are interchangeable, but there's such a distance between the production years that I don't think that I could swap the plungers out. It just won't frankly work. The P-06, this is way smoother in the hand. It's the same finish, but it's just nicer feeling. The controls, the slide, the trigger, everything, just a little bit smoother. It's the same double single action pistol. There's no difference. The curvature of the trigger, you're either going to like it or you're going to hate it. I'm okay with it. I don't really have a preference one way or the other. The P-01, it's going to be a little bit lighter because the caliber 1mm shorter, so there's a little bit less metal, but the cartridge is a little less powerful. So it's kind of a wash as far as how it feels in the hand. Now this one has some Cajun gunworks parts that the slide is a lot lighter, but even though the slide is a lot lighter, the trigger pull, I wouldn't say is more crisp whatsoever. I'd say it's a wash. These CZ pistols are really nice, so I don't think they really miss. It's just a difference in preference of what you like between the other. If you buy some of the Cajun gunworks parts, you notice that they have a more straight trigger. So they see more curved, then it gets more straight, and then they have an even more straighter one. So if you like the curved trigger, well, good. If not, you can always switch to a less curved one. So there is some cool things that you can do with these because of the parts interchangeability, but then again, remember, discontinued once you wear the barrel out. What good is it? Another thing is the cost of ammo and the less capacity. Now the cost of ammo retail is a ludicrous difference between the two. We're talking you can get a box of 50 brass cased, aluminum cased rounds for like under $15 now. This, it's like $22 for 50 rounds, and they're not going to have aluminum case options. Most likely it's only going to be brass. So the option choices for ammo for this are going to be way better. This, especially retail, is going to be way more expensive. I paid like $45 for 100 rounds at retail. That would be 150 you could get for 9mm. So the difference in ammo cost, and then of course, obviously, the difference in power and cartridge and capacity. But they are cool, and it is something that is going to keep its value because it's discontinued. So it's good to come by if you can get it for a decent price. But to seek one of these out and to pay over $1,000 for this, I would never do. So the person at the gun show selling it wanted like $570 for it. I wouldn't pay that. I traded a SIG P365 for it for another guy that did buy it. So if you can get them for a good price, I'd get them. But this is under $600 brand new, and they're going to want the same for a used gun, and you're not going to know how used it is. And so that's another thing about buying used guns. How much barrel wear does it have? Do you have a gauge that measures it? Because when people tell you the round count, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. How wore is the barrel? So they are cool, but there is some limitations to it. But if you can find one, I definitely would purchase it because it is fun to have and something different to shoot. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more.